September 21st, 2023. It's been about 2 years since I've uploaded a video. I have had that feeling that Payday 3 was going to fail, but nobody believed me. Within more than 2 years in the making, I have to finish what I started. What I'm about to do has not been approved by YouTube's terms of service. I live alone. Who is leaving paper when I'm done? Nobody uses paper anymore.
Everything f***ing hurts.
After 10 long years of Payday 2's lifespan, after 7 years of delay after this game was originally announced in development back in late May of 2016, Payday 3 was finally available to the public in September
21st, 2023.
I'm sorry, there's a bug in my throat.
And to be honest, I've never seen a game that was hyped so much fall into absolute obscurity the following months after its release. Now, I know Steam charts isn't an exact metric to pull out anymore because Payday 3 is a game that is available for both Xbox and PlayStation besides PC. Although I'm not sure if this is going to last as long because Payday 2 was ported to home consoles before, but these ports are notorious for their lack of updates. So this could be a major turnoff for people who want to get into the franchise if they drop console support like they did with the previous game. And I'm hoping that this game will still receive updates so nobody feels left out of the full experience. But I wanted to bring up the Steam charts because sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you can see the game sometimes go as low as 0 players online, and it has nothing to do with server issues. Now, first impressions are everything. The game that you're promoting has to be enticing for others, not only for your customers to keep playing, but also them to maybe recommend or buy the game for others to play.
What the fuck is that, dude? I don't know.
It's a simple cycle. Good game equals more sales equals more money. So we need to understand why this game is constantly bleeding players. So what if I told you that it would be hard to promote a game if you can't even play it to begin with?
About an armored transport carrying a payload of rare earth elements. All essential materials in the creation. So you need to
Oh, it fucking stacks?
As I'm sure you realize, I have not
Starbreeze have committed one of the biggest sins in modern gaming, and that was making their highly anticipated sequel only playable with an online connection. There was also the requirement that you had to create a Starbreeze Nebula account to log in to play the game. And I already did this before the game came out because I'm a sucker for free cosmetics. Look at this! But the website itself just looks very bare bones. There's almost nothing going on for it. Even before a playable beta for the new game was available, this was deeply concerning to their active player base because of June 8, 2023, 3 days before Payday 3's first gameplay reveal trailer dropped in the Xbox showcase, Payday 2 had suffered from one of the most controversial updates to date. Well, except for loot boxes, but honestly the loot box craze was at its peak in 2016. Also, I think we're starting to get pissed at every game just implementing these surprise mechanics. Just to name some of the major problems that Update 237 brought to Payday 2, originally this update was promoted to bridge the gap. Not only did Payday 2 launch on the Epic Games launcher for free on the first week, but they decided to add crossplay between both Steam and Epic Games players. And of course, that bridging the gap thing was absolute bullshit because even after the 10 years of this game's existence, this only affected PC players and console versions of this game still remain untouched. And the most recent ports for Payday 2 was back in 2017 on the Nintendo Switch. Am I ranting? Oh, I'm sorry, that's just probably what happens when I have to relive the silence that was going on. Probably not to make your first gameplay trailer for your highly anticipated sequel to look bad. No, I'm ranting again. The major problem with crossplay was the change in server providers. Instead of using Steam servers, Payday 2 had to move to the Epic Online servers instead. Because of this, people who've played Payday 2 on Steam, aka the game's biggest audience, was having trouble connecting to the servers. You couldn't join a game without disconnecting. You couldn't be in a game without disconnecting. You couldn't even host a game without disconnecting. I've never seen this error for the 8 or 9 years of me playing this game until the official live stream the same day Update 237 dropped. And it didn't stop there, because some people have even reported having their entire save data corrupted after this update. Linux support for Payday 2 was dropped, so you had to rely on programs like Proton to run the game now. And this is a bit of a coin flip with Linux users, because some games can either run perfectly fine, or they could be downright unplayable. And there's still a list of issues that I could be talking about for 10 minutes, but I won't have to. Their loyal community was pissed, and to hear that the new installment was online only just further drove the knife deeper. So, what did Almir have to say on the situation?
Since the game is online only, what happens if the servers go down? Well, they won't, is my answer.
Heisters, we are currently experiencing authentication issues with the Payday 3 servers, so you may experience issues accessing the game. We are looking into this. The authentication issue has been resolved and you can now access the game again. My bad, Heisters. We are currently experiencing slow matchmaking. We are investigating and working on a solution. Matchmaking is still unavailable. The team is hard at work with identifying and resolving to report that matchmaking was still unavailable. Now we realize that the matchmaking issues are frustrating. They are for us as well. We are still here and still working on getting you all back into the game. We are still seeing instability in the matchmaking. We are continuing this investigation and will keep working on it. Heisters, sorry for having kept you waiting in the safe house. We are slowly but surely getting the services working for you all. Matchmaking services are gradually getting back online. Thank you for your patience and apologies for the wait with Heisters. It was a long night, and once functionality came back, it was still unstable for a time. But we're now confident in saying we're on our way back to full for God fucking damn it, we are seeing an increase of matchmaking issues. The team is investigating. We're now seeing all platforms unable to matchmake. The team is working hard to restore functionality. The team is still working on the current matchmaking service outage, hoping to have a positive update soon. Status update, things are starting to look better. We are seeing players being able to create lobbies again and getting back in the game. You still might have a few issues, bear with us, while we focus on stabilizing. Hey Heisters, have you been able to log on yet and heist? Let Payday Twitter man know below. We continue working on stabilizing the experience for you all. Thank you for yours. I fucking give up on this shit. Hire a new Payday Twitter guy. For f***'s sake, I have better things to do than to scam me on Twitter. Wait, what the f*** is that? Oh, Jesus.
For the entire first week of Payday 3's release, the game was in an unplayable state. You were either gambling, waiting in the menu 5 minutes for a connection error, or if you're one of the lucky few to get into a game, you would just be disconnected a few minutes later. You couldn't even host a private game for yourself to avoid this issue because you still needed an online connection just to play the game by yourself. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit thirsty. Just... They hated Jesus because he spoke the truth! I don't have any cutouts for this. Just imagine that I'm completely naked right now. I've never felt this kind of rush from being so right. It just makes my penis hard. Oh, this one's my personal favorite. Payday 3 is dead. Bitch, please. The game didn't even got released just here. Take your dislike on video and fuck you. It brings me so much happiness. I mounted this comment on my wall over the fireplace. Why the hell did you try to word this like a Yelp review? I make YouTube videos, sir. I'm sorry. I'm just getting off topic. You get the So a week after launch, and the servers finally sorry. They started working as intended, and I could finally give my personal view on the game for what it's worth, and I felt disappointed.
Fuck me, it's a cloaker!
Are you
fucking stupid bitch! This stupid fucking justice, all fucking righteous fucking
A lot of the problems I had with the overall gameplay felt like it was made by people who didn't understand Payday as a franchise. And that's not far from the truth. The original founders of Overkill Software, Ulf Andersson, left the company in 2015 by the time that the controversial loot box was released into Payday 2. But even before this, there was a lot of internal problems happening in the company before Ulf's departure, mostly due to the conflict Ulf had with his brother, Bo Andersson. Yeah, Overkill Software is owned by two brothers. And Bo was driven more by the profits of the company versus the actual games themselves. I will go into more detail about the games and other projects Bo Andersson was responsible for making in a part 2 video, but if you want a better rundown of what Bo did to the company after Ulf's departure, then I definitely recommend watching The Ballad of Bo Andersson by Hatnia. But shortly after 2018 and the failure of the Walking Dead game, Bo Andersson was forced to resign and sell all his shares. I mostly wanted to bring up these two names because I believe there's a big misconception in people believing that Almir Listo is much more than just the face of the company. As early as August 2014, he's announced that he was the producer for Payday 2. And I believe when people see the word producer at first, they believe it's on the same level or even same title as a developer, and I'm gonna prove to you guys that that's wrong. You're wrong! A producer's job is more or less the backbone for that company. Marketing, controlling the budgets, relationships with both their community and their workers. Think of them as a manager for that brand. And for a producer, I'm surprised to hear his name more than the actual developers. Even Payday 2 seems to promote Almir's presence in the company more than the actual Anderson brothers. Even though Wolf is meant to be a stand-in for Ulf, even having a similar backstory that mimics the bankruptcy of both the brothers' previous company, Grin, which also has a mask in game, which I didn't even know that was a reference. How about that? It felt like anything past 2015 for this game's life cycle felt like Almir was being promoted as this golden child for the company, even more than his other producer colleagues. There was even a running gag in Payday 2 called Almir's Toast. Besides finding it in most of the heists in the game, there's even some heists that you can secure it and it would have the best possible payout out of any loot in the game. And besides him being the face of any new announcement for the game since 2013, I feel like when people really hear his name, I think people hold him to a high pedestal like other big names in the gaming industry, like Gabe Newell with Valve.
We are not video game developers, and it's funny.
Or John Carmack with Doom, or Masahiro Sakurai with Smash Brothers. Or Todd Howard if you're an absolute masochist.
You know who the fuck I am? I'm Todd fucking Howard. I was in the fucking chess club.
But in reality, he's not a game developer. He's just a community manager that represents the company and listens to players' feedback for the game. So I don't know what people's cope is when they tell him that he's doing a shit job when most of the things he cannot address is probably under an NDA from the higher-ups.
Almir, what is your exact job description? Are you the CEO? No, I'm not the CEO. I'm the head of community, and I am the brand director, which means that I work with the Payday brand, the Payday universe, and I work with you heisters.
I feel bad for someone like Almir, because when Payday 3 kept flopping after its release date, some people wanted to put a face on who's in charge, and unfortunately, Almir is probably the first one they see and blame and harass him for the continuing failure of Payday 3.
Dirk Goatsky says, we are not friends, you are simply the scapegoat.
When all he can really do is maybe give a thumbs up or a thumbs down at best, like he's trying to pass a bill in the US Congress. I know that comparing a game that's been getting frequent updates for 10 years over a game that just came out seems unfair. Payday 3 is obviously competing with its 10-year-old counterpart that's received a plethora of updates adding in a bunch of new content to the game. But my problem wasn't the lack of content for this game, it was just the lack of vision for it. A lot of the heists in this game feel bland or boring. Now, personally, I'm not someone who cares about realistic graphics in video games just so that I have to download close to 100 gigabytes just to play one of them. Western game dev, you get the point. What's not bland, at least, is the setting the developers wanted to capture. I lived in New York City for a good chunk of my life, and the atmosphere of the streets feels as accurate as you can get without slapping real-life brands everywhere. I personally love what they did with Rock the Cradle. I'm impressed they went with a unique direction with the subway station, instead turning it into a VIP section of a nightclub. I only bring that up because I feel personally offended that most games have to put in a goddamn generic subway station when they want to represent New York.
How are the drinks here? Great, if you like right. Never tried it.
Like, what the fuck is this? Do all game devs think all New Yorkers are just rats in the subway? Well, you're 2% right. Okay, maybe 5%. This is not helping my case. The cars not only move, but also react to traffic, like either from the stoplights or whenever you step right in front of them. That is until the alarms go off and the civilians just so happen to be right in front of them. Hey, so originally when it went loud in this game, cars just ran over a bunch of civilians no matter what. I unfortunately don't have any footage showing you guys this, because I honestly assumed something this funny wouldn't be patched out. I know. Sources... Just me, bro. The only thing that doesn't make any sense is that the lights on the sidewalk on all sides are the same. If this is how traffic was in New York City, where you were allowed to walk in all 4 directions on the crosswalk, just imagine the number of people in their cars that get tired of waiting for their lane to go green and just say, fuck it. Whoa! It really feels like a moving, breathing city, something that Payday 2 struggles at emulating, especially because of the diesel engine holding it back. Seeing the construction sites of new buildings and even scaffolding on the sidewalk to establish that New York City really is the city that never sleeps. Personally, I love the view that I got from the art gallery heist. It reminds me of the few times that I would go to the state parks at the edge of Long Island City and just see Manhattan on the other side. No, but the setting itself is not what's bland. Most of the 8 heists at launch felt like they were just reusing too many of the same objectives. Like, go find the code for the keypad to open the door. Go find the QR code to open the door. Go find the thermite to open the door. Or my personal favorite, go stand in these circles to open the door. It doesn't help the fact that if you wanted to start the heist on almost every map, then you need to find a couple of QR codes in order to gain access to the rest of the heist. Going loud does replace some of the QR code objectives. Usually the QR codes that are attached to NPCs on some heists are usually the ones that do get replaced on loud. And even if you do manage to get the QR codes from their phones in stealth, when the heist does go loud, it just becomes nothing more than just a huge time waster. You can't use those specific QR codes when you hacked it from someone's phone. Even though the hacking requirements for a moving NPC requires you to not only wait 30 seconds, but you have to be within that hacking circle. But if you aren't careful and if a guard spots you, then you're more likely to have to restart the entire hacking process. But for the ones that do stay on loud, then you need to at least have a lot of map knowledge just to know where they can potentially spawn. The worst offender has got to be the art gallery heist by far. This heist requires you to find a total of 8 QR codes to open every exhibit. Besides how scarce they are across the entire map, there isn't enough of them that spawn to open all of them. There are a couple of ways of saving QR codes, like dropping from the rooftop to the 2nd floor on some of the exhibits. But when it does go loud, the exhibits with the vent entrances get completely blocked off. And if you don't know where the rest of the QR codes are, and if you aren't aware of the fact that you can drop from the skylight from the 2 exhibits that didn't lock down on loud, then it's entirely possible as a new player to completely soft lock yourself from the entire map by running out of any possible codes that you're capable of finding that spawn on the map. At most, finding every possible phone location is just stalling the actual engaging parts of every heist, and at worst, it punishes players for not having any prior map knowledge. And the main reason why so many of these hurdles like this exist in this game is because of the design philosophy that Starbreeze wanted to implement in this game. The reason why the objectives feel boring in Payday 3 is the design philosophy Starbreeze had adapted into this game. Instead of maybe waiting for a drill or time lock to finish, they also want the player to be as active as possible in the progression of the heist. That also includes making every other player actively doing something in the progression of the heist. That isn't just shooting and taking out enemies. And the problem with this philosophy is its execution. From how Payday 3 centers around these overused objectives more, it takes away from the actual FPS part of the game. Have you ever heard of an unconscious decision? In most first-person shooters, from the shooting to the even positioning, there's not much brain power required in making these decisions, and maybe less self-awareness needed except for maybe the occasional audio cue. But these objectives are what I believe are conscious decisions. These can force downtime and positioning that the player does not want to give up. But more importantly, the more you force the player to be more involved with the objectives, the more they will notice the repetitive tasks that they have to do on different heists. That's why the drills in Payday 2 are an absolute joke. Even though it doesn't take much time to repair them, they still are an overused objective that halts progression in a large majority of heists in the previous game. So now there aren't just multiple objectives that have the potential to halt progression, but the fact that the game wants you to do more than just to wait out an interaction makes you feel more aware of what's going on. I mean, that could be seen as a positive to some people, but when there's about 3 or 4 repeating objectives across all 8 heists at launch, it makes the meme of the drill breaking down every 20 seconds feel less annoying than having to wait out in the open to lose all your armor. Speaking of overused, it feels weird that 5 out of 8 of the heists at launch all have the helicopter escape versus the actual van. Now, as a New York expert, I could imagine traveling in the air would be a lot more dangerous than traveling in the ground. Like, you don't think the US Air Force would be prepared for unidentified aircrafts in New York City 20 years after the incident? Going back to the objectives, besides the thermal drill in Golden Shark and the bouncer door in Rock the Cradle, and a security panel underneath the truck in Road Rage, I forgot to mention that because I have Vietnam flashbacks of another escort mission involving another particular bridge.
What a fucking...
Drilling in this game is almost completely optional because while in stealth, you are not allowed to use the drill. But when it does eventually go loud, there's still that secondary method to open the door with. Whatever that method might be will allow you to save as much time as possible before the first assault wave of law enforcers show up. I can make the argument that finding alternative ways of getting through security in this game is a great idea on paper, but in execution, drilling in this game feels less mandatory and more punishing for me when I don't know where the code might be to open the door, or if the civilian I needed either escaped or was caught in the crossfire. Oh, okay, goodbye. It's kind of unfortunate too, because drills can be readjusted now so you can maintain them without them stopping progress on the doors that they're on. But that's something you don't really get to notice when you start to develop more map knowledge and rely less on it. What happened to the Payday I knew, like pretending to be repairmen to steal a money plate from 2 families that were creating counterfeit money in their connected basements? What about rigging an entire election by hacking the voting machines in a warehouse they're stored in? By the way, this part was made before July, so I really don't know what the hell is going on with this presidential election.
He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards.
I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag.
He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah, I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Hey,
let's not act like Joe.
God, I fucking love being a Bosnian. Stealing an entire panic room, breaking a funny British man out from the FBI.
Daddy's home.
Or what about just straight up cooking meth? Oh, they imported that entire heist from the previous game 2 months after the game's release? My point still stands. A lot of heists in the previous game felt experimental. It felt like they were trying to spice up the gameplay, even as early as Payday 2's launch. It felt like they were trying to push that envelope. And sure, there were some misses like driving around an entire city to find goats while being sniped across every rooftop, but that was a necessary sacrifice to figure out what works and what doesn't. But a lot of heists at launch felt like they were trying to incentivize players to play more into stealth with all these cool new changes like hacking, gadgets, and especially the new art gallery heist to show off how different it was compared to Payday 2. Loud gameplay felt like a complete afterthought, and if anything, little to almost none of the objectives changed when the heist did go from stealth to loud, except for the first heist, No Rest for the Wicked. A lot of things that made me gush about the gunplay from the previous game was just gone. Different ammo types for shotguns, magnifying sights to hit things from further away, adding in mods like flashlights, laser sights, DMR kits that make assault rifles hit more in exchange of having less ammo, the akimbo weapons that made you feel like an edgy Newgrounds kid that was into madness combat. Yeah, I was one of them. They were all gone. And I don't even know what the hell I'm looking at when I see the stats shown like this. And some of the cool stuff that they added, like an LMG with a flamethrower underbarrel, a shotgun that swapped between pump action to semi-auto, I still didn't care if the weapon was bad. I thought it was still a pretty cool concept. The nail gun that had a single shot mode that penetrated targets. I was hoping for more powerful, cool weapons like a giant Daedric mallet, but all I got was just a woodcutter's axe of a downgrade. And that cool attention to detail of swapping between semi-auto and full auto wasn't even considered to be put into this game. The only nice thing I could say about the gunplay is that at least they implemented a crosshair into this game. You know, something that was added in 1996. I don't care if that was a harsh way of putting it.
That's a low blow, Colonel.
I will talk more into detail about the overall problems with this game's meta and gunplay in the loud gameplay section of this video, but to at least summarize it as a first impression, it felt like everything that you could do in this game was just slower. I've been into too many gunfights where I prematurely hit the reload key, and I forget that in this game you cannot cancel the reload, and I thought that swapping to a secondary could be the quicker option, but some secondary options feel like I'm flailing around like a fucking idiot, either because most pistols don't have good accuracy after the first shot, and even the ones that do just don't deal any damage. The reload speeds themselves feel like they want me to admire the crisp, well-refined, hand-done animations, while I'm running for my fucking life questioning why my assault rifle with the speed pull mag doesn't reload any faster, or why I'm reloading my shotgun like the bank teller from Chowder.
1, 2, 3.
The quick melee having a strict window and range and even a long recovery time, so I feel more incentivized to just keep shooting for the chance to stagger rather than just whiffing and breaking a large chunk of my armor in the process. The armor recovery itself taking as long as me going to the bathroom and taking a fat smelly piss after I drank a morning iced coffee. Oh! Fuck! The bag moving in this game feels like they were trying to pad out as much time as possible just to make every heist feel longer than it really is. And yeah, you can make the argument that the gameplay was just like that in the previous game, but most heists in Payday 3 just felt short in length if it wasn't for the bag hauling. I'm pretty sure someone on the dev team was even aware of how bag hauling was that much of a design flaw, especially with how Payday 3 was built around being more unfair, that they wanted to implement an entire perk branch dedicated to moving bags as early as the first 2 months after launch, but that quality of life change was only added after the several delays that was effectively radio silence from Starbreeze about what was going on for the future of this game. Now, if there's anyone that still plays this game, I guarantee you that they have Powerlifter just equipped on all their loadouts. I will put money on the table. Nobody in this game wants to risk the heist taking maybe more than an hour to complete when each player can effectively cut the bag hauling time in this game by half for each player that has it equipped. And there's another reason why people want to complete the heist a lot faster. Because challenge-based progression was plaguing this game for like the first 7 months after launch, it was seen as a much better option to just speedrun every heist while securing the minimum bags required. Either because of heist-specific milestones that give you more XP just by completing heists on harder difficulties, or 2 months after the game released that finally gave players just a very small XP reward just for completing the heist. That's also excluding the fact that you need to get all the bags to get get more of a bonus XP, while some heists have loot that's exclusively locked behind stealth. It didn't matter if the heist took 5 or 50 minutes, you were getting the same amount of XP, especially when you start to run out of combat milestones to grind for those easy levels. But there's also a weird oddity that happens when you try to speedrun the heists. The wave of enemies gradually does get bigger as more objectives and assault waves finish, but with the right team and the right build, it's entirely possible that you can outpace the heist's difficulty progression. And with how assault waves work in this game, it's entirely possible that certain special units don't get the chance to spawn up until the very end. And by the time that you're securing almost all the bags you need, the game just ends up literally throwing everything at you without a proper build-up. Heavy SWAT units with more armor will start to spawn in place of the regular SWATs, and if you're not ready, a single bulldozer can derail the entire heist just because you can't really stall out the assault waves to get any proper breathing room to replenish both your resources and to wait for your teammates to get out of custody. Even when you want to get the minimum bags required, some heists like Golden Shark require almost every bag in the heist. So what's the point in leaving the last 1 or 2 bags? No Rest even requires you to secure all the bags that are visible in the vault without having to open up any of the deposit boxes. And I wouldn't really notice these little minor hiccups if it wasn't for them constantly stacking on top of each other when tension between each assault wave was high, and decisions that you would make would always be a risk where you would always be losing something in exchange. Payday 3 is meant to be a reboot to the franchise, and this game's problem is the direction it was going to make this game more unfair. Oh my god. What the fuck happened? That is insane. That'd be fucking stupid. Please don't do that again. Did I forget to mention that every time I try to get footage for this game, I've been consistently getting memory leaks? So maybe about 25% of my footage sometimes becomes unusable. What the fuck is going on? Something punishing implies that there's something you can do to prevent yourself from being in that bad situation. But something unfair implies that there's so many things you could be doing right, only for the game to throw you a curveball if that curveball was a 50 caliber bullet with a hard carbon shell and the tip was laced with a lethal dose of fentanyl. Awesome. Awesome! Awesome!
Somebody help Dallas.
Armor bag right here. Tactical shield unit.
No.
Wolf is down.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck was that? Even in the production of this video, there have been moments I've taken a month hiatus from playing this game, and the first games I usually come back on are just me forgetting how the controls work, just so I fat finger everything and lose all my armor. I'm sorry, what? Okay, I could just figure out how to break the game while I'm panicking. I have a lot of muscle memory from what the controls were in the previous game, and Payday 3 takes that memory and throws it out the window. The F key in the previous game is what I used to both interact with the environment and shout at civilians and law enforcers, but instead, shouting was moved over to the middle mouse button and was given a new ping feature too. Most of the time I'm not even trying to use the ping, I just spam the button to do what I wanted to do, just for everyone on my team to hear it and see something I already had under control. Marking actual enemies requires as much accuracy as pointing your gun directly at them. And compared to the last game, it's a much more forgiving radius. Which sounds like a nitpick, but being able to track something as dangerous as a bulldozer through the wall can give you a lot to work with versus just a stationary ping that could literally mean anything. And that's only just loud. Tracking guards and stealth through walls can be a game changer, but if I manage to miss the ping, I'm either in the dark on what my next move is, or I'm answering another pager. Throwing bags went from G to Q, which throws me off not only because I have to use a different finger, but that finger is close to the sprint key, so I have to awkwardly use my pinky to let go of shift or take my ring finger off of W just to press it, so I can't throw bags further without giving my hand carpal tunnel. And of course, every FPS game coming out today, they just have to add in that obligatory slide mechanic. Just look at how I have to perform the slide with one hand. Do you think that's fucking comfortable? I'm trying to move my character in-game. I'm not trying to make her pussy squirt. There really is a lack of options for making the controls similar to the previous installment, so I just had to thug it out mostly. Even the sensitivity felt bad. Even on the highest settings, my mouse felt like a fucking boulder just trying to land consecutive headshots. I have an entire section in the loud gameplay talking about it, but to summarize why I really hated it, it all really boils down to Payday 3's armor mechanics. There was no way of being able to get back that armor outside of armor bags at launch, so the second best method of being able to maintain your armor was to take out enemies faster before they can damage your armor. One-shot builds were obviously just the meta, but oh my god, they were so fucking boring! The best part about Payday 2 was how you can play this game. A large majority of heists in this game could either be completed in stealth or loud. Because of this, you will potentially have players with a preference. This game at least gives you the tools, so not only can you tag your lobby with the preferred tactic, but as the host, you still have control over the lobby, like restarting after every failed attempt, or kicking players that don't comply. What, you're telling me that Starbreeze already implemented a system like that while I was making this video? I wonder how long it actually took them. Let me just look this up real quick. Over 1 year! Besides only 1 out of 8 heists at launch were loud only, the control you had in the previous game just didn't exist. Everyone has to agree to restart the heist, and if one player doesn't, then an entire lobby filled with people 1 minute can be converted into a bot lobby the next just because one person didn't accept. That usually happens when someone calls a vote. Okay, where is he? Where is this guy? There he is. Give me content. Give me content. Yes! Yes! It's always the same types of people. My mic was off, but yeah, no, I was glad I fucking got that. I'm glad I got that. I'd like to clarify that this is, this happened literally, like, we are fucking, how long is it? Like, we are fucking 10 months in this game's lifespan, and people still do this kind of shit. He's not even gone yet, like, why is he still here? Is he the one voting to restart? He's like still here and shit. As dumb as this might sound, I remember hearing a lot of people in the Payday community, even before Payday 3's reveal trailer, saying they wanted there to be more stealthable heists. This does go back to the bland objectives a bit, because I believe the compromise to make most heists playable both in stealth and loud can easily restrict a lot of the potential heist scenarios, especially when those same objectives are used in both stealth and loud to pad out the heist playtime. So going back to the co-op problems this game has, communication between other players were very limited. Console players especially are at a severe disadvantage because not only are they unable to see the text chat for PC players, but Payday 3 didn't even bother implementing a voice chat system, which that lack of voice chat might be a blessing depending on who you ask.
Thank you for playing. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
With the very few games I was able to find actual players in Payday 3 for the first 2 months, I felt like my brain was developing a tumor. So instead of playing with the clusterfuck of different strokes for different folks, a large majority of my footage was collected from me just playing in bot-filled lobbies instead. And the bots are just... I really don't want to talk about them. Even in stealth, people have a preference on how they want to finish the heist, and I couldn't do what I wanted without people just rushing it. I even stayed this one game just to count how many failed attempts this Hoxton player took before we properly finished the heist. It took 18. God. Dropping in the middle of an active game wasn't possible, and there were so many times I would just join a lobby filled with 0 people, and this was before the player numbers started dipping to 4 digits. This has happened way too much for me for like the first 5 or 6 months of this game's lifespan, and I have a theory that the main reason why the game servers just didn't work at launch, besides the high traffic of people playing this game on multiple platforms, was because the game had some kind of cutoff point, like maybe after the first 2 minutes of the heist starting. I've played enough public lobbies even within the first week or so, and I've noticed that there were games that clearly had at least one bot that could easily be replaced at any time, only for us to either finish the heist with barely any resources, or just fail it altogether within the final assault. Because you couldn't drop in the middle of an active game, especially on loud, the game could only drop you into a new lobby instead. And that may have been one of the main reasons why there was so much stress being put onto the servers for the first week of this game's launch. The challenge-based progression at launch was another huge problem holding this game back. Halo Infinite came out a little over a year before Payday 3's release, and one of the game's glaring issues was, well, you guessed it, the challenge-based progression. I mean, there was other things, but that was definitely one of them.
Forcing the player to play in one way is the most horrific thing I have ever seen. What if you wanted to lay back and the game told you to go play ranked? What if you had a buddy, but the game said go play free-for-all? Absolute dog ass.
This kind of progression system doesn't affect new players right away because you can unlock a handful of milestones maybe within the first 4 to 8 hours of gameplay. But right when you're starting to get comfortable with what the game has to offer you, and right when you're starting to develop your preferred playstyle, the game just throws up a wall with a spray-painted middle finger forcing you to use weapons or equipment that you don't want to.
No, I don't want to use Greenfield Sniper.
No! No!
And progression in Payday 3 is not just for cosmetics only. You need to get up to level 77 to unlock every weapon and equipment in the game. And you need to get up to level 100 to have access to all 21 skill points at launch. You know, this is also another stupid thing to think about that Payday 2 had. But you know how you could track the achievements that you wanted to unlock in Payday 2? Why can't you do that in Payday 3? Heck, why can't you just sort out specific milestones you want to unlock? Oh wow, I can filter out ones that are in progress or completed. Yeah, no, I didn't need to filter out specific guns at all. And those certain methods to kill with those guns. Hey, what did Starbreeze say about the progression system? Are they gonna do something about it?
Change the XP system, it's shit.
We're not working on any fundamental changes to it.
We are aware of the complaints. We are looking into our backend analytics and stats, how people are playing, where the complaints are coming from.
Will you stop pretending to be blind about the main issue and add XP rewards for completing heists?
Just to be clear, we're not pretending to be blind about that, even if I'm blinking a lot.
I have special eyes.
Jupiter, you don't understand, kid. I'm a level 100 because all I did was stay in a bathroom stall and start shooting down the corridor. I'm level 100 because I was sliding all over the place. Do you know how much fucking skill it takes to open and close the door and go through it? Do you understand how much I trained for this moment?
You like using you like using these mines that just have a reliable stun when things go loud? Sorry, pal, but you're gonna need to place about 100 microcams and 35 of these jammers. Oh, you only have just that many per heist? Do the math. Do you want your pistols to deal more reliable damage? Neither do I! Neither do I! Slap a fucking suppressor on it, because if you get kills with a suppressor also, you get to knock down 2 birds with 1 stone. Oh yeah, by the way, these milestones don't go to the same gun. There is a fucking typo. Like, I never realized why this milestone never went up until I realized that it wasn't my dyslexic ass this time. What's weird is that Payday the Heist, the first game in the series, handled this kind of progression a lot better than it did in Payday 3. Besides getting XP directly when completing objectives, also has a milestone system that not only allows you to level up faster, but it's not mandatory to do them all just to get to the level cap. Even tracking which one is the most convenient is as simple as holding down the tab button while in-game. And I know they did try putting something similar into the main menu 2 months after this game's release, but I'm still questioning why something like tracking your overall progression was an afterthought. I mean, if the only way you can gain XP is by doing the milestones, then wouldn't it make more sense to make the UIs for those menus as user-friendly as possible if people were trying to find more convenient ways to level up? Or they can just, yeah, do that too. What the fuck? What the fuck? Wait, Why is that even there now? With how Payday 3 not only had a lack of a server browser, but also how XP was harder to get at launch, I assumed the worst, that they were going to use DLC as an excuse to allow players to level up faster with the extra heist and weapon milestones that comes with each DLC wave. That, and the beauty that is joining a random public lobby without owning the DLC heist like in the previous two games, felt like they were trying to entice people to buy the DLC sooner if they wanted to level up faster. I'm glad that by the time of putting out this video, it's not like that anymore, but it really felt like that at the time for me. Although Update 7 for this game reworked progression to what was similar in the previous game, where you could finally just play the game and just earn XP without doing some stupid checklist, this is still not enough. This overhaul was introduced 9 months after this game's released. Even before that, there was a rework put into place around November that still allowed you to gain XP after completing a heist, but it's so minuscule that if you wanted to grind for it, then the best way was to keep speedrunning the nightclub heist because it guaranteed 90 XP after every 3 minutes. The bad online, the online only, the milestone progression, and there's still a handful of other issues that I will mention later in the video. But to keep this statement brief, the first impression that they left not only tear their own community apart, but it hurts me when I have to say this, that this game will be remembered as one of the worst games in 2023. And it didn't help that Starbreeze was staying silent about the future of this game for the entirety of October. The harshest way to put it was that all eyes were on Starbreeze, and they blew it. Although this game has received major overhauls to many aspects of its gameplay, from the armor to the skills and even the objectives from 2025 and onwards, the core problem with the game still persisted more than a year after its initial launch, with many of the needed changes being implemented at a snail's pace. Like, I'm not even kidding. I've seen several examples of the community making quality of life mods for this game months before the devs actually implemented these fixes themselves. Sometimes I think about getting antidepressants, but they're too expensive, so instead I down an entire ball of melatonin just to go into a coma instead. Now let's start talking about the gameplay and what every new player might be interested in when picking up this game, and that's stealth. Now before I talk about Payday 3 stealth, I think it's more important to talk about how flawed stealth in Payday 2 was. Now, I don't really like playing Payday 2 that much for the stealth gameplay, but with the 2,000 hours I have in this game and every achievement on Steam, I can tell you without a doubt that stealth in this game wasn't just flawed, but just flat out stupid. How the fuck did he see me? Your best chances of playing around stealth require you to have a minimum detection risk. In order to drop that, you need to equip weapons and armor with high concealment stats. That doesn't sound bad at first, right? Well, what if I told you that most, if not all, weapons that are modified to have a high concealment have worse stats overall for combat? Some weapons can't increase their concealment high enough to be used in stealth, while guns like the Bernetti 9 is a special case because it's one of the only few weapons in the game that can get a concealment stat of 34, but its damage is just some weapons are used for more utility, like the portable saw to open doors quickly, but the damage numbers are abysmal, the ammo for it can only be replenished with ammo bags, and the fact that this isn't a gun means you have to casually approach a law enforcer to hurt them with it. And I don't have to tell you what happens when you charge at police officers with a portable saw in real life. In your game about robbing banks, you would think that civilians would be more cooperative towards a guy wearing a mask and holding a gun to their face.
Sir, get down! Get down! Get down! Get down! Sir, get down! They're gonna bring in the big guns if you kill civilians.
Trying to actually take civilians as a hostage is annoying because it feels like they're trying to resist at every given moment. The bank tellers, especially in the bank heist, because they're more prone to hitting the panic button when they feel threatened. you know, this is a very common rule that Payday 2 civilians, and employees especially, don't follow, and that's what you're supposed to do when a robber is threatening you with lethal action. You're supposed to put your own safety first and not resist. Even when you try moving these NPCs, it just feels as annoying as trying to be at my special uncle's house for over just one weekend.
Hey! Are you talking about me with your boyfriend the other day?
And I was trying not to say anything offensive, so I didn't have to censor that.
What did you say?
No, Uncle, I was just working on my video in the other room.
How about you start working on something more useful like fixing the TV for me? It won't turn on after I threw the remote at it.
And was this because of your Parkinson's?
No, it's because the TV played that beer ad with the in it again.
Alright everyone,
Oh my
so
God,
it's Friday
stop
night,
doing
I'm ready to go
that.
out. Doing
Signed up on this. Don't they know they're trying to indoctrinate children? I mean, it's a beer ad, but still, like, maybe they're trying to indoctrinate me and my penis. It's fucking, they're turning me on right now.
Oh yeah, no, that editor's note's actually serious. I had to deal with this for 3 months. I couldn't record any new lines in that time. I can't just keep censoring him, it's gonna take forever. What am I supposed to do? I know he's not allowed to drive after that Pride Parade incident. And it already cost me a fortune to fix my damn car.
I'm rambling right now. I don't know how to keep saying the word but I know I have to keep censoring. I have to keep censoring.
Fuck it, what's a couple $1,000s down the drain gonna do? Hey Uncle, do you want to go to the grocery store to get more of that non-gay beer with my car? Oh! Oh! Fuck!
Oh, damn it, keep your arms still!
Yeah, that's coming from someone that can't seem to keep their arms straight.
Oh! I can't wait to go play Mario Kart in real life!
And then I said, oh my god, is that the guy from the Pride Parade?
I don't even know how he got the keys in the ignition in the first place.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
Oh, if this is what Oppenheimer feels like, I feel like I just unleashed my own fat man into the streets. If that fat man was stupidly homophobic. Sometimes when you escort your hostages, they just don't know what to do and stand there do nothing. They effectively just became brain dead. Like my uncle after I gave him my car keys.
My leg keeps moving, I can't hit the brakes!
I'm sorry, this bit just fucking sucks. I'm under the personal belief that Stealth in Payday 2 is not a game of patience, but one of taking less risks. And dealing with civilians the ethical way is considered to be more risky because of these following reasons. Civilians don't go down right away when you shout at them, which in a game of Stealth where every decision matters, they have the potential of starting a chain reaction of other civvies and guards alerting each other. Cameras can still sound the alarm if they see any guard or civvy on edge, and cams will instantly detect a hostage the moment they get in line of sight. Even if the cameras are down, you either have to deal with their slow walk speed or worse, their pathing. It's not like the devs didn't try to fix it, but for how unstable the diesel engine already was, it's no wonder why their pathing is still this bad since 2013. You only have a limit of 6 cable ties max per person in Stealth, and on some heists you can have more civilians to tie up than cable ties. And leaving a civilian untied runs the risk of them calling the police. And with all these problems, it feels wrong that it's almost normalized to see players shooting civvies because it's widely considered to be the least risky option in any stealth heist. Taking out a civilian and bagging their body is more reliable than moving them while tied up. The only thing that civilians do in stealth is just waste body bags that you could be using for patrolling guards. A heist like Election Day is one of the few heists where a civilian is running the cams, and trying to hide him as a hostage is almost impossible, so you're better off blasting him and throwing his body in the dumpster outside. Here's a little trivia. Did you know that the detection range for a tied up civilian is larger than the body bag they were bagged in? I should probably put this disclaimer that I'm not trying to devalue human life. This is only a video game, so please, Mr. FBI men watching this video, I am very stable and also normal, and still taking my daily dosage of normal pills. But if you really want to know how bad it is to control civilians, try to complete one game of Go Bank without any of them dying. There's even an achievement for it, and for the over 1,000 achievements, there's only one in Payday 2 that requires you to game end a civilian. And there's a handful of them that require you to show them mercy. But that doesn't really matter to me anymore when I already got the achievements once, and I could just keep paying the cleaner's costs.
I know what I was doing, and I know it's all wrong. This is gonna cost you. Put it on my tab. What was that? Put it on my tab.
Going back to the body bags, these were your only way of moving bodies around if it didn't involve launching them with a suppressed shotgun. And if your body bag count is lower than your leftover pager count, then you have to worry about the corpse you just left being found by another guard or civilian. My last gripe with Payday 2's 10-year-old outdated game design has to be the cameras. You couldn't really tell where their blind spots were half the time without trial and error. It doesn't help that Titan cameras that appear on harder difficulties are also this weird box shape, so you wouldn't really know where they're facing until you get close enough to it. Some cameras can also spawn in different rooms or locations, and because they're stationary, they can still cover a large portion of the room that they occupy, making it unsafe to take out guards or civvies in front of them. Cams are mostly a minor inconvenience, and that's intentional by design. But if a camera does see something like a dead body for just a split second, then it's an instant detect. Even if that heist does house a cam guard, there's nothing you can do to stop the alarms from going off if the camera detects anything suspicious. And understandably, there's many heists in Payday 2 where the cam guard doesn't exist, so the cameras can never turn off permanently. I just hate that the game gives this false sense of hope that something else could be done to stop the alarms from going off. Whenever you get caught by a guard, sometimes they would shoot you without any real warning after getting caught sometimes, and other times they give me enough time to answer the pager or pay for my maintenance bill.
I want you to understand that you matter.
Give myself a haircut, go to my local Walmart and restock on supplies. Dinner. Look at Meow Skull feet pics, and then I get to take out the guard that saw me. Even when you're supposed to take down a guard that saw anything suspicious, it's a risk for some ungodly reason, because if a guard takes any form of damage after 3 seconds of being alerted, they have a 10% chance to discharge their weapon, alerting any nearby civilians or other guards. Payday 2 stealth isn't a bad system, it's just got many flaws built into it that you have to be aware of or account for before you can minimize as many risks as possible. For each flaw that does exist, there's some kind of workaround that makes the system more tolerable. Stealth in Payday 2 more or less felt pretty experimental to me because most of the stealth mechanics that did exist more or less were just the same almost 10 years ago. And the first game in the series, Payday the Heist, originally didn't have stealth as a proper mechanic. The diamond heist in the first game was a closest thing you could get to a stealth heist, but it more or less felt like a bug or an unattended effect in the game's design. No Mercy was a free heist added a year after the game's launch, and it did have more of a proper thought out stealth segment, but besides the janky nature of Payday the Heist's mechanics and the fact that the heist still goes loud after a certain point, stealth was more or less a requested feature because of how different the approach was when the only solution didn't have to be just guns blazing. But if you ask me about what I think about Payday 3 stealth, it's the fact that it has a lot of welcoming improvements that change how you're supposed to approach the tactic. It almost felt like the game originally had stealth as the first thing in mind in development, and it not only improved, but it added so much more depth into a barely touched upon system. Civilians are a much more useful and controllable asset in terms of both stealth and loud. Guards will give you a lot of second chances when you get caught depending on where and how, and cameras, although they can shift what direction they're looking at, they have a much better blind spot to take advantage of. Out of all the changes made to Payday 3 stealth that I like, it's that detection no longer is affected by concealment because that stat no longer exists, meaning now I can bring a wide assortment of weapons with the only drawback being how effective it is in combat or if it has a suppressor for taking out the guards. Detection risk is now determined by simple factors like how fast you're moving, whether you're crouching or not, or how far you are from the witness. I know that sounds like the sky is blue statement for stealth game designs, and you are 100% correct. The difference in these stealth mechanics are just and with Payday 3. Casing mode in Payday 2 only really did 3 things at most, like marking guards and cameras, getting into a more favorable position to mask up, or sometimes just being able to pick up a keycard. But casing in Payday 3 allows you to do almost anything without having the need to put on your mask. You could even outright complete some heists without ever exiting casing mode. And of course, it's still balanced with a couple of factors. While in casing mode, you don't have access to all your movement options, so you won't be able to jump or slide. You can't even use zip lines or even mantle to get to higher ground unless you masked up. The main reason for masking up besides getting into position now is to either take a civilian as a hostage or to take out a guard that spot you committing an illegal activity. These usually range from walking into secure areas of the map, or some interactions are marked with a red box and exclamation point. When a guard sees you committing a crime in casing mode, he'll attempt to cuff you, and if he succeeds, then a search protocol will be triggered. There are multiple ways of triggering a search mode, but to summarize how this mechanic works, guards not only treat private areas like secure areas now, but their pathing will change drastically from being less stationary to being more active in how they move around the map, but also going into rooms that they never bother to check without a search being triggered. Resisting arrest will either make the guard sound off the alarms, or he'll take his time to pull out his firearm and shoot for everyone in the map to hear. But as long as you mask up and take out the guard before he gets the chance to do so, you can continue the heist with your mask on instead. Casing and masking up both have their strengths and weaknesses. Casing is built around a more passive approach to get through security, but has problems with dealing with guards and cameras without wasting too much time, while masking is more aggressive, allowing you to take out guards or civilians in the way, allowing you to secure a portion of the map with less problem. Regaining your movement options also allows you to find alternate routes that you wouldn't be able to access while in casing mode. Of course, you wouldn't be able to go out into public areas anymore without alerting every civilian in the area that you have an unregistered firearm. I mean, that should have been obvious that the average New Yorker goes into fight or flight the moment they realize they can't throw their Yankee caps like Kung Lao to outzone you. The only thing they can do at that point is hit you with their level 3 Metro Card super. The fuck is that? I wrote that. Every map is split into 3 sections: public, private, and secure areas. You're not in any trouble for just roaming around in a public area, which, I mean, I don't have to explain it, but come on, some people might be living in North Korea for all I know. That's just kind of how society works. Even if every guard on the map is searching, as long as you're in a public area and avoid doing anything illegal, guards and cameras won't do anything, but obviously we can't continue the heist without going deeper. What is this place? My Hero Academia TikTok compilations?
Puppy, this chicken's bussin'.
I can't be that fat. Wait. Bread tubers?
I have yet to hear a convincing moral or legal argument as to why possession of child should be illegal.
No, I can't. Wait. Is that the Bronx? I don't know what I was expecting. I thought there'd just be more has-been hotel stuff in hell. Private areas aren't considered as illegal, but there are more illegal actions for civilians and guards to witness. Every civilian in a private area and onwards are classified as employees. This means you have to be careful even around them when you're doing anything illegal so they don't call over a guard to sound off the alarms, or if you just want to stay in casing mode. If you get caught by a guard while casing in a private area, then you have to stay in the yellow circle until the guard walks you back into the nearest public area. And I have a problem with this, mostly in regards of how slow and janky this mechanic can be sometimes.
You heard me the first time. Let's go. Get moving, or you're gonna be hurting. Don't move a muscle.
If you don't have a skill like Glitch Protocol to stop the guard from escorting you out, then there's no other way to make the walk back any faster. As dumb as it might sound, I don't know why I can roam into a private area only for a guard to clearly see that I wandered back into a public area, only for him to get pissy just because I didn't want to stand in his hula hoop. I mean, it's not hard to understand the mechanic, but my god, I'm just edging to blow this guard's head off, even if I don't have a suppressor. Every time I get caught while I'm either playing by myself or I feel like I'm the only one in my team trying to go deeper into stealth, I just imagine Chief Kick-a-Bitch from the casino, crying as he's forced to walk the trail of smears. See, the joke is that Payday 3 is shit. Walking into a secure area is considered as an illegal action itself, so any employees minding their own business just becomes a dollar store guard at that point. Because you're not supposed to be in secure areas, guards will attempt to cuff you while encasing, and running away will only sound off the alarms. And if a camera spots you while masked in any 3 of these areas, then it instantly sounds off the alarms. One more thing about secure areas is that anytime that you're running around in them, guards can be alerted by the sound and check where that sound last came from.
No, 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 no. Oh. Oh my god.
Yeah, so after that moment, there was just a really big brown stain in my chair. The only mechanic I think needs an improvement in stealth is carrying bodies. Although you don't have to worry about shitty assets like body bags now, so you can take out as many people as you want until your pager count reaches 0. Stashing a body is as complicated as playing Tetris if you were my special uncle with Parkinson's. Oh god. Even his corpse has Parkinson's. There's the occasional bathroom stall where I can hide these bodies in, but even then I feel like guards just have thermal fucking vision and just know exactly if something is wrong. This instant detection is the only old archaic design that hasn't changed from Payday 2, but instead of it being on something easier to manage like stationary cams, it's now just on the guards that could wander anywhere, especially when a search gets triggered. I'm not sure if this was ever changed yet, but since launch, if a guard did see a tied up civilian, they don't have any alert symbol over their heads, and they've very easily ruined a good handful of stealth runs for me. You can't even chuck these bodies into something that you think would be safe, like a trash can or even out into the fucking sea. Apparently this is a safe place to put the body, but I honestly feel paranoid just knowing fully well that it could just take one civvy to ruin everything. Can't I just get a locker or something, like in Hitman, and just stuff the bodies in there? Fuck man, I'll even gladly take a wood chipper and just fucking stuff them in there. Whenever you saw a dumpster in the previous game, it was a sign of relief because you could just throw a body bag in there and close the lid, so you didn't have to worry about a guard or civvy ruining any possible stealth attempts if you were on the other side of the map. I may be only scratching the surface of what they did in stealth, and that's true. There's a handful of design mechanics, whether intentional or not, have played very important roles that influence the choices that you make in stealth. I can literally go on a 7-minute rant on how opening and closing doors is now a very important stealth mechanic and sometimes can be used to save yourself in loud.
Stay behind cover.
I did not think that would work. But I'm not door sexual enough to justify that. All I gotta say is, fuck Payday 2 doors. The only thing I'm really disappointed in stealth in Payday 3 is that you can't launch corpses with a shotgun like in the previous game. Literally unplayable. No wonder why this game has mostly negative reviews. Stealth overall in this game feels like you're given a lot of second chances to keep the heist going before the alarms do go off. Obviously, there are a handful of ways of triggering the alarms, like immediately forgetting what button was your grenade button, but if you were trying your best not to, then it's possible to make enough progress to finish the heist on loud.
I fucking heard that. I fucking heard that. Oh my god. I fucking heard that.
It's even possible to finish the entire heist in stealth without a suppressor equipped or any skill points invested into stealth. Even if stealth isn't your preference, there are benefits that allow you to go through security faster, like grabbing a keycard to open a door that would take you a minute to drill open on loud. From what I could at least see in a game dev's perspective, it looked like the devs really wanted you to treat stealth more or less like a resource, even if it wasn't your preferred tactic. But if stealth is your preferred tactic, then you're in luck because there's a handful of resources that you can gain access to that more or less are exclusive to Payday 3's mechanics, with the only exceptions being that only 2 of them are worth bringing at a time. You see what I did there? I fucking Trojan horsed your expectations. I personally feel like this little new spin on stealth just kinda sucks in general.
I think we're going to find out what happened when you use the world's most powerful laser pointer and give the camera superpowers.
Of course, I forgot to water the fucking plants. I wish I was there instead of this stupid parody of some indie game. I am thirsty. Did I leave my door unlocked or something? Whoever is writing me sounds like a loser. Of course, I forgot to water my floral carpet. The door is already locked. It smells rancid. Uncle? Is that you? I think I've seen it all by now.
He still has my fucking car keys. One of the main selling points of Payday 3 across its marketing was that it was supposed to bring the franchise into the modern era of 2023. I stuttered because I just realized I spent 2 years making this fucking video. And to reflect upon the view of the art direction for this game, a completely new resource was added into this game called tools, or gadgets. I don't know, the naming scheme for this game sometimes isn't really that consistent. Fucking doing cocaine is more consistent than playing this game. 3 out of 4 of the gadgets at launch in this game were primarily used for stealth. Microcams are the first gadgets that you have access to, and they are objectively just the best utility in the game in terms of gadgets. You only have 2 per heist, and sticking it on the wall can give you remote access anywhere on the map to see around the exact spot where you put it on. And this is something that all gadgets are capable of, where you can stick it on any living person like a guard or a civilian. But in the case of the microcams, if you just attach it to a guard's back, you can just constantly keep track of that guard's movements. Even if you do think you have workarounds like being able to hack camera feeds outside the cam room, it not only takes more time to do than the microcams, and the fact that you have to locate a camera in the first place, but you'll usually be more out in the open for guards in private or secure areas to spot you. Honestly, my favorite use case scenarios for the microcams is that you can really get creative with how you can collect information around the heist with it. Sticking one of these in front of the switch box in the vault room of Golden Shark allows you to see the next correct color or switch you need to flip instead of relying on your teammates to tell you. You could just pull out your phone and check the color by yourself instead of running back constantly to the vault room to find the next switch color. There's another one in Dirty Ice where you can throw a microcam onto this table leg from the outside of the break room window and see one of the possible code combinations for the basement on the whiteboard. And if you pair it up with finding the Employee of the Month plaque in the actual store, you have about a 66% chance of actually opening up the basement without ever having to pick up a single QR code. Microcams do require map knowledge to use to its fullest, but the reliable information that it can provide is something that I don't think has any other competition or trade-offs in terms of the other options that you can unlock later. The ECM Jammer used to be a deployable from the previous game, and when a single player maxed out all jammer skills, it not only lasted for 30 seconds, but its main purpose was to prevent almost all technology from going off to set off the alarms. Cameras stopped working, guards and civilians were unable to call the police, and more importantly, pagers will never go off during this time period. You can carry up to 2 jammers and have a total time of 60 seconds if you manage to properly space them out. In solo play, it's not really that broken, but if you consider the fact that everyone in a stealth lobby is carrying max jammers, then the effective time that you can get to stall before the alarms can trigger is basically 4 fucking minutes. You'll probably not make full use out of the 4 minutes due to some lack of coordination, but a lot can still be done within the 30 seconds that each box provided. When you don't have to sneak around anymore and rush to get as many objectives done as possible, especially when you have a 4-man group, a lot of heists that can be completed in stealth are a lot quicker than you think. This is called ECM rushing, and just to give you the Cliff Notes version of it, this strategy was so valuable that it defines Payday 2 stealth. Whether you're in a group or by yourself, ECM rushing is what I'd imagine having protected sex is like. The alarm in this scenario isn't actually when the condom breaks, but when her pregnancy test comes back positive. Oh, I'm having fun. No, I'm having a lot of fun making the stupid jokes like that. And ECM jammers in Payday 3, instead of stopping electronic devices completely, only makes them run, and I quote, "Stupid slow." When you activate a jammer in this game, all technology on the map will only be half as effective. Cameras take longer to spot you, and things like someone calling the police or pagers going off will take twice as much time. But the ECM jammer slowdown can stack the more that are currently active, but the only problem with that upside is that 1, most people don't care about running ECM jammers, at least at launch, and 2, this is the only gadget in the game where you only have one of. So its slowdown effect not only isn't as useful, but there's almost no other situation that I can think of using it for. I assume there may have been at least some better use case scenarios for maybe using them in a squad, even if there isn't any kind of synergy whatsoever. But besides my own experience of never getting into a public lobby with more than just one person at launch, solo play just makes them feel almost useless, at least for me. And the slowdown sometimes isn't even that consistent across all the technology it can affect. Even with multiple jammers going off, I didn't know that guards can still call the cops much faster than a deceased guard's pager going off. It does make sense in the core gameplay, but I just expected the rules to change in my favor when the jammers are active. Throughout my entire experience playing this game, I've never seen anyone attempt a well-coordinated ECM rush even after the Scrambler branch was added, because I can only assume that rushing in this game is just too demanding compared to the last game. Even though that you can slow down the cameras from spotting you, it doesn't stop the guards the same way at all. And strategies like ECM rushing still gets further decentivized simply because the very guards that you're trying to avoid can now hear your footsteps in secure areas if you're running. And on most heists with a camera in a safe location with the right skill combo, you can just hack and disable every single camera in a specific room so you never have to worry about cameras ever spotting you in an objective heavy area. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable and understandable that the jammers from Payday 2 really did need some kind of nerf moving forward into the new installment, but the overall changes in the actual stealth mechanics into Payday 3 was so big that it almost felt nothing was really accounted for when the jammer was re-implemented. Like, these changes feel so ass backwards, like if I left my baby in the oven and put my dinner to bed. Oh wait. They didn't even bother introducing something as useful like using a jammer to unlock an electronic door without a keycard like they could in the previous game. There's also a hidden function that I would have never known existed until I saw a video on YouTube showcasing this on No Rest for the Wicked. An active jammer can actually slow down something like the die packs just enough so that one person can save the money without any of the cash going bad, while at most you can only salvage about 6 out of 8 of the bags when you're just playing solo. I mean, it does make sense, but why not clue the player into something like this can actually work? Are there other things I have to be aware of when running jammers? Can I slow down the crypto wallet from losing value in the Rock the Cradle like that one asset that I can buy? What about slowing down the rate in which the lasers change in the art gallery heist? From a player's perspective, I assume that most things I get to use was implemented with the bare minimum being done. And something as small as the die packs in No Rest pisses me off because I don't even know what else they could have done with the jammers. What if they did something negative, like make my own hack times run slower? What if things like drills or thermal drills break down faster? So many lobbies could be griefed if that was actually true. The reason why I'm so fixated on this is because there's some heists in Payday 2 where active jammers can negatively affect affect the objectives. On heists like Hoxton's Revenge, there's a time lock that needs to go down in order to open the panic room, but if at any given time that there is an ECM jammer active, then the timer gets paused. It's not a thing on most heists, but it can definitely piss you off like how it pisses me off when the rules the jammers have to follow is very heist specific. The jammers didn't even have any loud utility at all until the Scrambler branch was added in the first paid DLC for free. I would like to voice my concerns about the jammers in my next Payday video, talking about the changes this game has went through since launch, but all I want to say is that I think it's a fucking stupid idea that the only way they could figure out making jammers better still requires you to spend a couple of skill points already when microcams still didn't require any investment to make amazing. Motion sensors are the last gadget you could use in stealth, and they aren't as useless as jammers at launch, but the utility is just so laughable to me because not only did they potentially get outclassed by microcams in Payday 3, but they even got outclassed by trip mines in Payday 2. When you place them down, they're supposed to mark anything around them, but they can only mark up to 15 NPCs per sensor. After that, the sensor just stops working. You could place them on guards to automatically know where they are on the map at all times, and as long as that guard is still marked, it doesn't subtract from the total number that the sensor can mark. But it can potentially be even worse because if that guard walks past a group of civilians, then the sensor usage could drain almost instantly. Placing these on doorways or in the middle of corners was the most effective use out of them. But if you just needed to know if it was safe or not to pass, then you were literally just given the best stealth tool at level 1. This is probably not the most accurate comparison, but let's say if your life is in danger and there's 2 weapons on the floor that you had to pick up. Would you rather pick up the AK-47 to defend yourself, or the fucking slingshot from Ocarina of Time? The trip mines in the previous game not only gave you a plentiful number of 14 to 7 when maxed out, but they're always capable of marking any guard or civilian that walks over them. For how overpowered they were, especially when just one person could bring them to cover the entire heist, I still find it ironic that these explosive traps originally weren't even considered to be used as a stealth deployable. And you know, instead of making buffs to the gadget directly, I'm still mauling over the fact that they literally just implemented the trip laser instead as a separate thing. It's also really stupid to me that the ability to pick up a misplaced tool not only didn't exist at launch, but when it was implemented, it still required you to have a skill point just to pick them back up. I understand that this is a resource they wanted to feel more valuable or limited, especially when it's the only resource in the game that you are incapable of resupplying. What you get is what you get at the start of the heist, but sometimes the game might screw you over when trying to place them down. The placement is exact, so there isn't any delay, but if there's something like a guard that's trying to spot me, then I could imagine that I move my mouse quickly just enough to maybe place them in the wrong corner or surface. Even when I was trying to get example footage where I stopped playing this game for a month, my dumbass forgot which button was the interact key. The skill in question they added doesn't work on used consumables, so I don't understand why the need to unlock a nice quality of life change was locked behind a skill point at all. I mean, there was a lot of skills like that, but I'm really getting ahead of myself. The final stealth utility you gain access to isn't really classified as a tool in this game, but its utility in stealth is too good that it would be a problem if I didn't bring up its usage. The throwing knife makes a return from Payday 2, but instead of having access to 6 of them like in the last game, or 3 like your other deployable options, the throwing knife only has 2 by default. But that arbitrary limit only really is there for stealth. After a throwing knife makes contact with any surface that isn't a beating heart of a human being, the knife breaks on contact. So technically, if you only use the knives to take down enemies, then they practically have infinite uses. The throwing knives, besides being your best substitute option for not carrying a suppressor, has received a rework so defining that its actual purpose doesn't even stand the same footing as the throwing knife before it. Well, besides being a DLC weapon that can no longer be obtained due to licensing issues. But that's a rant for another video. I'll be using still images of myself crossing my arms like every other shitty rant Sona. Throwing knives in Payday 3 aren't just weapons, but their utility relies on them being used as noisemakers. Throwing them at a surface near a guard will force them to stop and look around the area the knife landed. This can be used both as a way of moving guards out of the way of objective spots, or even getting yourself out of corners where the nearest cover that you can get to is in the way of a guard's patrol path. There is a skill in this game that makes your knives unbreakable, but Retriever has a problem with telling the player that the skill is considered to be a trade-off skill. The simple act of using your throwing knife to distract guards now doesn't work without a search mode being triggered just because the knife didn't break. And you know, at least to give some credit, the knife does at least break into a million pieces, so it's unrecognizable instead of something lazy like cutting the model in half. Or, what the fuck? It does make sense why they did this, because unbreakable knives would completely defeat the purpose of making them an actual resource that you have to be careful with not to waste at all. But the aspect of not disclosing this crucial information is something that plagues Payday 3's entire game design, and it's something that does reoccur constantly the more I kept playing this game and looking into each of the mechanics more into depth. Losing your AoE options with other grenades for Loud may not be as bad when you consider the knives can be great for taking out most enemies in one hit, especially when you're forced to reload your weapon. But sadly, there are options that exist that make throwing knives redundant on Loud, and I'll go more into detail about the skills in their own section. Overall, when it comes down to the new tools you have access to for stealth, I love the concept, but I feel like the execution was either just shy away from being perfect, or just not even close to being finished. I feel like those jammers might be stuck in my brain because of the time it took for me to make this video was pretty stupid slow. Aside from the infrasonic mines, the only gadget I didn't talk about in this section because I was saving it for the Loud part of the video, every other gadget kind of does lose their usefulness on Loud, that you just forget you could even bring them in the first place, let alone the fact that it's just sitting in your inventory just collecting dust as you progress through the entire heist. Motion sensors just stop working after a small horde of SWAT units just rush in through a door that you place them near. Just shooting an actual enemy is a lot more useful than just looking through a microcam while in cover to find them in a crowd. Or in other words, constantly pulling out your phone and doom scrolling in the middle of a heist. And you do nothing! You do nothing! Now, depending on who you ask about how difficult Payday 3 is to someone who played the game at launch, you probably hear about a 50-50 split on how difficult the game really is. I've looked both long and hard about the criticisms for this game, and ever since launch, although both sides do have valid points, I don't think I've ever heard of a game where a lot of people say that the game was either too easy or too hard on opposite sides of the spectrum. It's such a weird phenomenon that I just decided to coin the term as Schrodinger's Payday 3. Now, maybe today there's already a general consensus with the game's difficulty, especially with the new content that was getting added. But back before this game was getting updated almost monthly after January 2024, and then it went into a screeching halt going into the next year, I've seen this argument split the Payday community in half, almost like politics. No, this is not going to be the last time I bring up politics as a joke in this video. I hope you understand that I'm just pissed that Vermin Supreme didn't win the 2024 election.
Do you still stand by your pledge made in 2008 to provide a pony for every American?
Yes, I do, sir. Free ponies for all Americans.
Oh my god, I could have used the free fucking pony. I am never gonna make enough money to buy a new car in this fucking economy. Now, for this section, I'm only gonna be talking about how difficult stealth really was, and I'll go into more detail about how hard Loud really is in the Loud gameplay section. I am going to account for both sides in the argument of difficulty, but I just want to let you know in advance that I do have a bias, and I did believe that the game was difficult at launch in the wrong areas. When you do go past the hard difficulty, there are things called stealth modifiers that heavily impact the gameplay in stealth. Very hard will add 1, and overkill will add 2 of them. For the sake of this video, I'm only going to go over which ones that have been in the game since launch, so that doesn't include any new ones or loud modifiers because they didn't exist at the time. And if you think the game was easier because of that, then... No. No. Do you hear yourself? You sound fucking stupid. At launch, there were only 3 stealth modifiers. Titan cameras were the bread and butter of higher difficulties from the previous game. Just like the previous game, these cameras are unbreakable, and the only way you can take them out is to take out the camera operator themselves. I don't know why the sound just died there. Ah! 2? You serious? The Cerberus core only really affects one thing in this game, but surprisingly, it's effective for what it does. It disrupts the secure loop skill. Secure loop allows you to run a runtime to hack a camera to basically disable it for as long as you want until you run out of available runtimes before you need to hack another camera to reuse a pre-existing runtime. With the right skill combinations, you can have a total of 3 runtimes, and because of this, it was objectively the best perk in the game because you could effectively lock down portions of a map without having to ever take down the camera operator. Cerberus core just takes that and gives every runtime a limit of 5 seconds. After that, the camera goes back to normal. I really liked this, but the only problem I had with this modifier was that it was only really exclusive to one heist, and that being the Golden Shark Bank. But for this last modifier, it was on every other heist that could be stealth. That wasn't Golden Shark. The lead guard was the biggest unnecessary difficulty spike this game just had to offer. All it says on the surface is that taking him out will send off an endless pager response. So even after your answer is pager after taking him out, you still have to worry about that pager going off again. Oh yeah, by the way, that's not a joke. Going up the difficulty not only deducts 1 total pager you have, but it also increases the number of guards that are active in the heist. So not only do you have a grand total of 2 pagers on overkill before a search gets triggered or before the alarms go off, but killing the lead guard does nothing but put the entire stealth attempt on a timer. I think the worst thing they did with this guard is that no matter what heist that you're on, the absolute bastard that made the lead guard in this game just figured out how to force an interaction between you and him regardless of the heist. On No Rest for the Wicked, the staircase is usually a safe spot. No guard ever roams in the staircase as long as you don't get escorted out. But the lead guard not only patrols the staircase, but he also patrols the other 3 floors too. On Dirty Ice, the lead guard starts patrolling the back alley on the same side with the delivery truck. The entrance that he guards is the quickest and easiest way to get into the back room of the jewelry store, so it gives you more time to get the manager into the back room to access the jeweler's workshop for a better pay. But him just being there at the start of every Dirty Ice run is always a potential time waste. Also, this was the only heist the lead guard appeared on very hard. The update that added more difficulty modifiers just implemented a guard to replace him in the back alley when he didn't spawn. Regular guards never go into the VIP back room without a search being triggered, but the lead guard has this as a part of their normal patrol pattern. On Rock the Cradle, the lead guard has 2 patrol patterns, one for the club upstairs and one for the VIP section after you activate his trigger by walking past the bouncer. Did I forget to mention he can go up the staircase leading to the manager's office?
There's another one?
Stay right there. Don't even breathe.
What do you mean this? Why? Where? Why do you go up there? I did not.
Under the surface is at least more manageable because he stays only on the first floor as long as the search doesn't get triggered. And already on the surface, no pun intended, it already sounds a lot more 99 Boxes was probably my least favorite heist to play on Overkill, and the lead guard is still no exception. He patrols the central warehouse, so not only do you have to worry about not running into him while trying to find the right storage yard, but you have a timer on your back when you have to secure the main loot of this heist twice, and waiting any longer can drastically drop your payout. Finally, Touch of Sky requires you to get a QR code from a unique guard on the map, so you can get a key card to the filing room to open the panic room to get the... It's replaced with the lead guard, isn't it?
Definitely not bullshit game design alert. Definitely not bullshit game design alert.
Most guards in this game follow a patrol pattern that's easy to choreograph. Even if a search does get triggered, there's still some rules that they have to follow, like never changing floors. But the lead guard doesn't have a consistent patrol pattern that you can follow. His pathing is completely randomized. Aside from the empty closets, bathrooms, or camera rooms, he could be anywhere on the map, especially when every guard is on search mode. This is something that I don't understand that wasn't considered as a rework for the lead guard. Not only does he appear on harder difficulties and the total pager count gets reduced past hard, why couldn't they just make his pager count specifically cost 2 instead of having the endless pager response? You'll still have the rest of the guards patrolling on the map like nothing happened, but you can't take them out and answer their pager without the alarms going off. I see this as a pretty decent trade-off. Taking out the lead guard makes the heist less RNG dependent on his pathing, but it sacrifices 2 pagers, meaning you don't have much of a safety net for when you do get caught. There is something already in the game that exists similar to what I'm advertising. If you don't answer a guard's pager, not only does it consume 2 pagers instead of 1, but a guard nearby will also investigate the area near where you took out the last guard. It even accounts for if you don't have enough pagers to put the heist either on search mode or loud, depending on how much you've used. The fix, in my opinion, for the lead guard already exists in the game. It's just never considered as an option in development. The problem with the lead guard, in my opinion, is that he demands too much high maintenance when he's present on the map regardless of difficulty. Almost like you need someone to play a specific role on the team to keep track of him. I see what they were trying to do in terms of his implementation, but the level of maintenance not only wasn't even required on most heists on very hard or under, but microcams not only became the mandatory gadget you had to bring on solo stealth, not just because you could keep track of his every movement when you stick it on him, but it has much more longevity than the other options. When you do get a general understanding of your toolkit to avoid him, he just becomes very annoying to deal with. And every precaution that you have to take to avoid him only makes the heist not only longer, but it could potentially stall for enough time for just normal guards that you don't have much of a problem with before now feel even more dangerous. I really wanted to bump up the difficulty to get the full experience of what the new stealth mechanics had to offer, but the lead guard honestly took a lot of fun away from any stealth attempts, so it's not surprising that a lot of people decided to use exploits just to cheese every heist that he's in. For the first 2 months, if you had the cover-up perk, this allowed you to answer a guard's pager automatically after performing a silent takedown on them, but doing this on a lead guard results in an endless pager never going off. It was common for people to sacrifice just 1 pager to get rid of the most annoying threat in almost every heist on the highest difficulty, even if the cameras remained operational. And of course, this game just still had so many bugs and exploits at launch that some of them just seemed to work together like brothers in arms. If you still wanted to save a pager, you could just take a loot bag and throw it in front of the cam guy and then just pick it back up. And the cameras just stopped working altogether. Heck, why just stop at the camera guy himself? Why not just break every guard's AI by simply using a throwing knife and picking it back up? Like, if anyone told you that stealth was too easy at launch, it wasn't because stealth was easy itself, it's because the glitches you can do were so easy to perform with just a little bit of practice. Most of these bugs did eventually get patched 2 months after launch, but it's still fucking insane to me that this is still a long enough period of time for people to find even more creative ways of breaking the game even further than intended. That loot bag thing I said about disabling the cam guy, guess what? There's like several other more ways of disabling him without putting a bullet between his head. And I'm serious when I mean creative. I don't know who the fuck had the time to realize that there is a way to trap every single guard on a heist like Touch of Sky with just a couple of throwing knives and a breakable door. That's not even a bug at that point. That's just something that should be displayed in a modern art museum on loop. The last gripe I have with stealth could just be the biggest thing that this game has is just the lack of information you get from increasing the difficulty. Like, sure, the modifiers were indicators of what you could expect, but if there's something I just hated about Payday 2 stealth, it's that they just had to throw in something extra whenever you go up from overkill to mayhem. There's an extra heist-specific modifier that's just not listed there, and you have to figure it out for yourself, and I hate these things so much. No Rest for the Wicked requires you to find a QR code in the first floor before you can access the second. Everything from trying to find the manager and the passcode to open the vault was moved from the first floor to the second floor instead. And the room that may have both of those things has a skylight that the guard on the roof can see through to sound off the alarms if he sees a single civilian tied up. Dirty Ice requires a red key card. Instead of being in the safe with the power switch, it would be attached to the guard that's roaming the basement instead. And the biggest example that I hate so much is Rock the Cradle. The entire back room of the nightclub not only goes from private to secure areas on very hard, but on overkill, the entire nightclub is classified as a private area. That literally changes the entire approach you have to the entire heist, and although I did like that, I didn't like the fact that it wasn't even told to me in the mission briefing. And that's not even including the lead bastard they shove in your face all the time. One more weird quirk about how easy it is to exploit difficulty in this game is the lobby's RNG seed. seed. One very common thing you'll hear whenever you get into IT or computer science is that everything in programming is not completely random, and the same thing does apply to video games. The closest thing you can get to making a game more random is by creating a seed that takes anything that involves chances play out more differently. Most games can house more than 1 billion possible combinations, and there is a limit to how random the game can get. But you're probably never going to experience every possible one in your entire life. The heat death of the universe is probably closer than getting Dream's Blaze Rod and Ender Pearl drops legitimately. Fucking hell, man. The fact that he spent money on a Harvard professor to prove his innocence. I'm pretty sure Dream was a billionaire at that point of his life. Like, he's got both things that a Hollywood actor and a politician have. Money, fame, children. I'm just saying, if I had a lot of money and if I was caught cheating, I would probably hire one of O.J. Simpson's lawyers. This is a video about Payday 3, what am I talking about? Unless you're playing on Payday 3 solo mode, it's not an offline mode, don't get your hopes up. Every public or private lobby that you do join has a fixed RNG seed once the map loads in. This means that if everyone in the lobby votes to restart the heist, then everything from enemy spawn locations to objective spawns to even the passcodes are the exact same. So if you do manage to find out what the right code is before the alarms go off, you could just restart the heist, input the same exact code, and skip a big chunk of the entire heist. If you were to look at old world records for speedruns in Payday 3, it's most likely that they were able to achieve these shorter times just by figuring out what the RNG seed was first. I wouldn't really have much of a problem with fixed RNG seeds as long as there's some kind of penalty in place for maybe restarting the heist, or if its only existence is just in easier difficulties. The fact that you could do this exploit on Overkill could just take a lot of the fun away when all you have to do is just rush to find passcodes or where specific rooms or items can spawn. So now I'm pretty sure I've talked about almost every possible changes or other additions that they've done with stealth into Payday 3, and now I can finally move on to talk about my favorite part, or at least my more detailed part, of this video, and that's talking about the loud gameplay. Compared to how they wanted to make stealth harder, Payday 3's loud difficulty spikes were just counterintuitive by their own design. For starters, when Payday 3 first came out, there was no such thing as loud modifiers, while the game already had 3 stealth ones implemented. Now, because of that, I won't have to go over them too much in this video, but it should at least put into some kind of perspective how the game may have been easier on the surface. The only thing I could say that I liked about what they changed in terms of difficulty for this game is that enemy health pools stay exactly the same on harder difficulties. So if you know if a weapon should be able to one-tap on normal, they can do the same exact thing on overkill. The game is entirely balanced around this decision, and even in the dev diaries before Payday 3 released, I just got the feeling that the devs behind this major gameplay decision just got a massive hard-on just talking about its benefits. And you know what? I could see it. His penis, I mean. You think it looks like Peter Griffin, where it's just, this fat is just covering it? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
One other thing that people will notice is we don't actually change their health values between the difficulties. And this is because we want to encourage people to be able to play with each other. Because one feeling we want to avoid is a situation where you have to play on an easier difficulty and be bored, or they have to play on a harder difficulty and be overwhelmed.
Keeping every enemy health pool consistent across all difficulties is something I personally think should be a design decision that should be across every video game that makes an 80-year-old politician shit ashes when he thinks that specific video game promotes real-world violence by now. If there's something I hate a lot about spikes across almost every video game I've played, it's the fact that enemies can start to become bullet sponges, especially if I don't have a proper build or a strong enough weapon to take them out. In Payday 2's case, I have to remember numbers like 128, 225, and 255 in the back of my head every time I want to play the game on death sentence. Each of these numbers are important damage thresholds, and even if my build doesn't have a very consistent way of two-shotting most enemies, if the right skills proc, and it's more than enough to hold my own against a horde of sponge daddies. Although enemies have the same health from normal to overkill, the damage that they do from jumping up each difficulty is just as lazy as increasing enemy health pools and calling it harder. The damage that SWAT units can do jumping from very hard to overkill feels like I'm tackling a horde of miniature bulldozers instead. They're not tanky, but when you get hit, it feels like every enemy has a drum mag shotgun. Bots really seem like they can hold their own on very hard, even before they got buffed. But when you jump up to overkill, you're either just left trying to revive them all, or just letting them go into custody. And if you think I'm over-exaggerating about the damage, then just get hit by a Nader's gas grenade and see how much it deals. Whoa! Whoa! The lack of any loud modifiers to make the game more uniquely difficult may have been the biggest reason why damage from very hard to overkill feels like a drastic change. Something that Payday 2 already does whenever you jump up difficulties is that sometimes they'll introduce new special units that you haven't encountered on the easier difficulties, like how cloakers only start spawning on very hard, and a handful of different bulldozer types can start spawning on death sentence like the minigun and medic dozers. There's a lot of creative ways of making a game harder, and I was honestly hoping for something similar to this. They don't have to add in a completely new enemy, but adding in some different enemy types for pre-existing enemies should have at least been considered. Payday 2 added the Marshall Sniper and the Marshall Shield units to the spawn pool across all maps near the end of its lifespan, and I feel like these units should at least be considered as alternative units that should have been in place when the game's difficulty jumps to overkill in Payday 3, especially with how easy it can be at implementing them, because all it really is just a couple of different properties and stat changes that are just given to them. I personally think the best way of making overkill a meaningfully harder difficulty is to either add in more unique special units or to increase their spawn numbers so that roughly half of the units have some kind of gimmick that drastically changes the way you have to approach them. And I know what I might be saying might get a little bit hypocritical when I do eventually cover special units in this video, but I still want to reiterate that my input is more or less opinion-based for specific aspects of gameplay that I think should be touched on for the most part. I don't expect every idea I put into this video to come together to make the best possible game, or at least the best possible Payday, but I'm at least hoping that some of my suggestions are at least heard. With how special units already spawn in Payday 3, it's very orthodox. As an example, cloakers only start spawning around the halfway point of most heists, while bulldozers spawn near the end. Simply throwing out some kind of spawn order and just allowing every special unit to start spawning at the start is a very simple but effective way of increasing difficulty instead of just increasing numbers. But unfortunately, that's not how they decide to increase difficulty, and I will go over more into how they did it in the part 2 video. But what I can tell you is that there was one more thing that they did have at launch that was supposed to increase difficulty across every difficulty in this game. There are these things called final assaults. They usually should pop up right when the heist is about to end. When this happens, trying to get some breathing room for cops to retreat or just being able to trade resources just doesn't happen anymore. This is the game's way of telling the player to stop being greedy and escape as soon as possible. But final assaults are just so goddamn buggy that you can easily trigger them on some heists without even trying, and those heists aren't even close to being finished yet. On the art gallery heist, there's a painting that you need to steal with the USB drive, but if you secure that one first, you can easily trigger a final assault when you secure the second to last required loot on this heist. And because one of them is the UV paintings, the other one could be on the first or second floor, which can be difficult, especially if you haven't found all the QR codes to open all the possible exhibits that it could be in. 99 Boxes has 2 containers that have extra loot inside of them, but if you secure them and at least one coolant bag from the correct container, then you have to unlock the second one with just heavy SWAT units and bulldozers spawning non-stop. And here's an honorable mention for Rock the Cradle. When you secure the crypto wallet and the heist goes loud last minute, then you have to wait out in the middle of a final assault wave before the escape arrives. No first responders, no hostage trading, none of that. That's because if you secure what the game considers to be all the required bags, then the final assault will trigger regardless of what part of the heist you are in loud. But just like how there are ways of triggering final assaults, there are ways of avoiding it, even trying to avoid some special units to start spawning. Every heist has a flag system, so every time that you pass it, the next assault wave will have those new special enemies that will start to spawn. I'm trying to make a visual for it, and I know I'm failing, okay? Graphic design is my passion. But what I'm trying to visualize here for the example, if you try to trigger something like like the cloaker spawn flag in the current assault, then they won't be able to spawn up until the next assault. And this does exist for all difficulties, including the overkill difficulty at one point. Going back to the art gallery, if you just know what paintings that you need to secure and which ones you don't, then all you can really do is just secure all the optional paintings, and when you start securing the required ones last, then it's possible that cloakers and bulldozers don't get the chance to spawn because you aren't flagging the game on specific loot that's being picked up. The most important thing about final assaults across all heists and how to avoid ever having to deal with them is to simply move every bag near to the escape, but wait on securing them until every bag is nearby. Now, from a developer's perspective, its implementation was obviously meant to make it so that staying in the heist longer was meant to be a higher risk, but the reward was meant to roughly double what the required amount was supposed to be. I like the concept that the difficulty scales based on how long the heist was going for, and they at least fixed that when you go into the overkill difficulty now, but final assaults are still fairly exploitable, and when you start to develop enough game knowledge, difficulty doesn't feel like progression, it just starts to feel like a trip mine. I feel like the bare minimum was done to implement a flag system to scale difficulty. I feel like if I left a Mario speedrunner in the same room as this game, he would probably figure out how to beat every heist in under 30 seconds and get Dallas to BLJ in the Joy's bedroom for the secret gamer girl ending. Or he can just strangle himself with the controller cord before touching the game. Either way, something else was completed faster. One more thing that I forgot to mention, but if a map had an elevator in it, you can stand in it, not only preventing it from closing, but also preventing it from spawning new units. I knew that this bug existed, but I didn't even know that this bug existed as early as the beta for this game. But if you manage to shove a tied up hostage into these elevators, or even a near valid spawn location, then not only do units spawn less frequently, but those units will be funneled around other spawn locations around the map. I know it sounds like I'm trying to make Payday 3 this super easy game, easy to cheese, especially with a well-coordinated team, but this game was far from easy, especially within like the first 6 to 8 months when this game was out. The real difficulty that Payday 3 has isn't really making enemies bulky or jacked up with enough steroids to make losing an ear the least of your problems. Payday 3's constant need to inconvenience the player was the most difficult part of both loud gameplay and maybe for the entirety of the game. For the remaining sections of this video, I will be going into more detail about it, but for a good overview of what to expect, things like armor is not a renewable resource. Many of the FPS mechanics are vastly different or more complex from what the previous 2 installments offered. The menus can't even properly tell you what you're bringing may or may not be beneficial to you and your current build. Your best skills in this game are constantly asking you to perform a meaningless task like a Fortnite emote just to keep using them. And it doesn't help that you may not have access to every possible option because of how slow leveling up can get, especially when you max out every possible milestone that was specific to your favorite weapons. Certain special units even felt like they were either undertuned or overtuned in development, and when you're playing a game that has so many server issues and the player base was constantly hovering between triple to 4 digits, you'll start to realize how painful the game can be when the only thing you can rely on are just the computer-operated heisters. And because of all these elements, everything wrong with Payday 3 within its first 6 to 8 months felt like it was constantly conditioning you to play in a specific way. It's like a neatly crafted spider web made of shit. Now, as much as I've glazed the stealth revision for Payday 3, I have a very important confession I have to make to you all, and it's really hard for me to come out and say this. I'm coming out of the closet. I fucking hate stealth! I made an entire video on how much I love Payday 2's loud gameplay, and had an entire video talking about a bad April Fool's DLC, disguised as me talking about more knowledge I have for the mechanics and viability for a 10-year-old game. I really live for this shit, man. The doctor gave me a prescription to fix my ADHD, a gun, a bigger gun, and some hardcore meth. If there's one thing that violent video games have taught me, it's how to properly beat the shit out of these hoes so they don't talk back. My bad, it should have been caustic soda? You think I'm not ballsy enough to smoke that shit? The fire gives it a more authentic Latino spice. I'm running out of Dracula flow lines to make up. On the surface, the dev team behind Payday 3's development was to keep the gameplay more grounded and make it feel less like a power fantasy game as much as possible. In other words, they probably wanted to capture what made the original Payday the Heist and Payday 2 at launch without unnecessary mechanics like health regen, dodge, or even the obligatory I don't want to die button when you use most perk decks that have a reusable item on cooldown. And you know what, honestly, I can't even complain behind that decision. Like, the meta for Payday 2 just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. Armor builds do what they were supposed to do in terms of taking raw damage with actual heavy armor until Anarchist released, and it made running no armor as effective as running the best armor type. Like, what is the logic behind tanking an entire SWAT team with just a suit on? Did my entire body just get replaced by an endoskeleton or something? I remember a time when dodge builds were so niche that if you were caught running just the two-piece suit and have a detection risk in the single digits, you would have just been kicked on sight because most people just assumed that those two things were as weak as a stealth build on loud. But now that's the only thing that you see every time whenever you try playing this game on harder difficulties now. The movement speed you get with the two-piece is more valuable than anything on harder difficulties because being able to reposition quicker is a lot more valuable than just taking 2 shots before going down. And within the time span of 10 years, new content was being added, new perk decks kept getting released, an entire skill tree system being reworked for more possible build combinations. So if you needed a specific skill, you didn't have to invest into so many other skills that you didn't want. The skill tree rework also offered more creative freedom on what deployables or weapons you could bring too. Before the rework, you either had to balance between having inspired medic bags, but the only weapons you could use were pistols. Or you could run any weapon type you wanted, but be forced to default to the first aid kits. Even though that dodge builds had the potential to deal more damage and could tank as much hits as armor builds, the skill point investment to make them work was just still too expensive. And even for how limited the fugitive skill tree was, this was your only means of making dodge any better, because before that, fugitive just didn't exist at all. Skills that seemed pointless to invest into before became more accessible. There is a word for something like this, but I just cannot put my finger on it. No, I still can't put my finger on it. And I still managed to figure out how to sneak in more knowledge about a 10-year-old game. I still can't stop myself. Oh, my back! Oh! Starbreeze was definitely trying to capture lightning in a bottle that made the original Payday the Heist enjoyable, but the way they were trying to go at it just feels like they were trying to go out of their way to reinvent the wheel. What made Payday the Heist a challenging game wasn't just the horde of cops, but resources in this game were much more difficult to replenish. Ammo especially, even though you have access to 3 guns, a primary, a secondary, and a handgun, it's not that hard to run out of ammo in the middle of a gunfight. Trying to get ammo from the bodies that you just dropped can be a risk because instead of tanking it with just your armor, your health can get shredded instead, and the only way to replenish getting back that lost health reliably is to use medic bags. The main crux of Payday the Heist when I've played it is either do I bring ammo bags so I don't get shot out in the open and still have an offensive pressure, or do I bring medic bags to afford making more mistakes. I've actually decided to play Payday the Heist for the sake of making this video on Payday 3, and honestly, I could see the reason why people still want to play this game despite Payday 2 not only having more content, but having every playable map from the heist be eventually ported over to that game. Maybe it's because the heist's charm is mostly because of its simpler design, and maybe because of that simplicity, resources in this game are just as valuable as trying to stay close to your team so that you don't get overwhelmed in just 1 second. Even though the classic maps in Payday 2 are almost a one-to-one recreation of the objectives, the playstyle that you have to develop is just drastically different. This might not be for everyone, but if you're a fan of Payday, then I at least recommend you to try Payday the Heist out. You don't have to play it all the way. The mechanics are just different enough to make me appreciate how much I really want the devs for Payday 3 to lock the fuck in when rebalancing this game. Payday 2 at launch tried to follow the same resource management formula as Payday the Heist, but after a couple of years, the formula just turned into
Oh my fucking god, I'm so healthy!
Armor in this game, and just like in Payday 2, acts like a shield or a secondary health bar that fully regenerates after a couple of seconds of not taking any damage. Of course, the Payday franchise didn't invent the shield mechanic, but so many games were doing it even back then because developers knew that balancing between resources was a lot more manageable for the average player when you add in a safety net like this.
That's not even realistic!
Okay.
what does that have to, like, explain to me why that's interesting, because in the real world, I have to write up lists of stuff I have to go to the grocery store to buy. And I've never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun.
Fucking gay ass bullshit.
So what was Payday 3's solution to bring back resource management? First, they wanted to remove dodge, which, okay, that's understandable. I could argue there are ways to make dodge balanced, but the main reason why dodge wasn't here at launch was to make the game less about a game of chance as possible. The second thing they did to play into resource management was to remove any or all passive health regen perks. Instead, you either had to bring your own medic bags or rely on hostage trading to get your health back. Overall, I saw no problems with these changes, but even from seeing the beta gameplay footage, I felt like there was going to be a growing problem with how one mechanic they decided to change completely. I really don't have to be a rocket scientist to tell you that if armor is now a resource that you have to manage just like health and ammo, and if that resource is just not able to get replenished, then there are going to be moments where the game just feels unplayable because you don't have the ability to peek without going down or into custody. This entire footage you are seeing is what the playstyle I had to adapt to, and that's constantly peeking a single corner, hoping I don't get shot once by the bulldozer on the other side.
That won't stop me.
Going back to how armor works in the previous two installments, at its core, it rewards players for playing good and knowing when to take risks. Payday the Heist especially centers around good positioning because there are no other ways of restoring health except for the medic bags you bring. Because armor now feels exactly like a secondary health bar instead of a safety net now, it makes no sense why the core gameplay punishes you for both cautious and reckless play the same way. The worst part about it was that armor wasn't just a non-renewable resource now, but your only method of getting back that lost armor was with the armor bag deployable. I just want to rant a little bit. They took a deployable from the previous game that all it did was just allow you to store your heavy armor into it just so you can use it to put it back on. It did nothing else but waste a deployable slot. If I told you that armor bags were OP and medic bags were the worst deployable before Payday 3 release, you probably would call me a schizophrenic. You'd be right about that. Outside of that and waiting for a portion of that armor to regen, there was no other method of getting back armor at launch. Health and ammo? Perfectly fine. Kill swats for ammo, trade civvies for health. What about armor? Just don't get shot, you fucking dumbass. Just take cover, you fucking Armor in this game at least doesn't feel like you just shit yourself from drinking some random influencer energy drink, so you have to slowly make your way to the bathroom hoping a small turd nugget doesn't fall out of your pants in the process.
I don't get it.
How did you not understand what I said? I said that in perfect English.
Half of what you said was just nonsense.
Yeah, okay. Alright, fine. I'll explain it again. You can bust it down sexual style without being a sauced up Saxon after getting his legs broken with aluminum bats.